Namaste. On behalf of her chairperson, Priya Gasdar, and her committee, I, Sujita Chetiala, Honorary Secretary of Flow Hyderabad, extend a warm welcome to our speakers, Kaushalya Guduru and Vennela Reddy from Tatwa Legal, who will walk us through today's subject, e-commerce and social media marketing, a legal compliance playbook. I welcome all the fellow Flow members for this session. Chairperson Priya Gasdar will now address the gathering. Over to you, Priya.
Thank you, Sujita. Namaste. Speakers of the day, Kaushalya Guduru and Vennela Reddy of Tatwa Legal, who have graciously come on board this year to bring us informative sessions on a multitude of legal aspects. Past chairpersons, Flow Hyderabad and Y Flow Hyderabad, and my dear Flow members from Hyderabad and across India. Thank you all for joining this afternoon of learning. Let's look at some statistics. The global e-commerce sales are set to smash through the $6 trillion mark this year and head towards $8 trillion by 2026. Across the digital world, we have 26 million e-commerce stores and 2.75 billion digital buyers, accounting for a little over a third of the global population. This explosive growth, though it is transforming how we do brought with challenges that can make or break businesses. Because 85% of consumers say they won't trust a company after a data breach. This makes robust privacy policies not just a legal necessity, but a business imperative. And when it comes to advertising, last year alone, companies paid over $500 million in fines for misleading practices. That's money down the drain for errors that could have been easily avoided. Influencer marketing is another hot topic. With the industry now worth a staggering $15 billion, the stakes are very high. And then there is social media. While it can catapult your brand into the spotlight, one wrong move can lead to a PR disaster. I remember this case when Pepsi faced massive backlash for their controversial ad featuring Kendall Jenner. It is a prime example of how quickly things can go down south. When Pepsi released its ad starring Kendall Jenner in 2017, it aimed to promote unity and peace by showing her joining a protest and handing a can of Pepsi to a police officer, which then diffused the tension and sparked celebration. However, the ad was met with widespread backlash for its perceived insensitivity and trivialization of serious social justice movements, particularly the Black Lives Matter movement. Critics argued that the ad reduced complex social issues to a simplistic narrative that could be solved with a soft drink. Pepsi had to pull out the ad and issue an apology, as did Kendall Jenner. So today, we are diving into the essential legal strategies that will help online businesses navigate these waters confidently and steer clear of legal challenges. I'm sure the insights from our legal experts will enrich and enable us for a safer future in digital business. Thank you, Kaushalya and Vennela, for coming on board to do this for us. Before I hand over the mic to Sujita, I would like to take a minute to thank all those who pitched in for Flow Style Tatwa for making it another edition Flow Hyderabad can be proud of. Thank you. And I think I stand corrected. Over to Pooja to do the introductions of our speakers.
Thank you, Priya. Thank you very much. I am pleased to introduce two esteemed professionals from Tatwa Legal, Hyderabad. Kaushalya is a partner at Tatwa Legal with over 15 years of experience in corporate advisory and commercial transactional matters. She has provided expert advice to investment funds, financial institutions, and high net worth individuals across various sectors. Vennela is a manager at Tatwa Legal, specializing in litigation and dispute resolution. She has extensive experience in civil, criminal, corporate, commercial, and arbitration matters. Vennela has represented clients in Supreme Court of India, High Court, Civil and Criminal Courts, the National Law Tribunal, and Consumer Commissions. Additionally, she has significant experience in trademarks, copyright, internet laws, and media and entertainment laws. So please join me in welcoming Kaushalya and Vennela. We look forward to an insightful session, and I would also like to inform everyone Kulpreet from the Sparkle team will be moderating the question and answer session at the end of the speaker's presentation. So please submit all your questions in the chat box for Kulpreet to address. I now hand it over to the speakers, Kaushalya and Vanilla. Thank you so much.
Thank you to the Fiki Flow team and Priya and Pooja for the very kind introduction. And thank you all of the guests who are sort of joining us today. Vanilla and I are happy to talk to you about e-commerce and social media marketing. Before we start, I wanted to share the story with you, which I think will help set the context for this session. When I was about 7 or 8 years old, this movie called Rangila had released. I know, I hope many of you would have watched it. And in that movie, the actress wore a particular pair of boots. And I was insistent that I needed these pair of boots. And I think my parents also took me quite seriously because they didn't link buying the boots to any kind of performance at my exams or anything of that sort. So off we went to buy these shoes. I grew up in Mumbai. So we went to this place called Bandra, which has lines and lines of just shoe shops. We went from stores to store looking for this perfect pair of boots. Each store had its own experience. In one place, I couldn't find my size. In the next, if I had found my size, it wasn't the right color. If it met both, the quality was not up to the mark. And if it met all three, it didn't meet my budget. At the end of the day, I finally found the pair that I wanted. I went home a very happy 8-year-old with two very exhausted parents. It made me realize, while I was putting this presentation together, you set the story in the context of the year 2024, it would look very different. All I would have to do now is sort of just pull out my phone or my laptop, get onto Myntra or Ajio, any of the numerous e-commerce platforms that are available to all of us, set in the right filters for price, size, and I'll have the pair that I want. It's rather simple. I mean, I think just easily available, low-cost data plans and smartphones has just changed life for everybody. But like Priya very rightly mentioned, that this evolution in technology and this digital age comes with its own set of challenges. It has, in fact, changed the way we do business and the rules of business, and with that, the challenges that come with it. And now to effectively manage your business in these changing times, it's extremely critical to evaluate not just growth strategies, but also protection strategies to take care of yourself. So in this presentation, we'll give you an overview of the e-commerce sector, the key governing sort of regulations, and the legal measures that you can put in place and our recommendations on how you can protect your business. We will also delve into the new rules of advertising and marketing online. So with that, let us delve into the fundamentals of the e-commerce sector. To start with, let's talk about the regulations that we should meet. The regulatory framework, you could say, is divided into 4 parts. The first is consumer protection, then is data protection, safe payments, and then a whole host of other requirements. So first, to start off with consumer protection, while the law itself was in place for quite some time, it may, for the most part, it regulated physical stores and protected consumers in the physical world. But it now also protects consumers in the online world as well. And what it looks to sort of protect consumers against is unfair trade practices. What is an unfair trade practice? That is essentially where you give a consumer or misrepresent to a consumer what the product is about, just the constituents, the lifespan of a particular product. So for instance, if somebody tells you that a product is 100% organic, but it is not, that would be a misrepresentation. Or you do not inform the consumer that, that a particular hair oil which you claim will cure your hair loss has other sort of allergies or anything of that sort. You don't fully inform the consumer of all of these aspects. That would be an unfair trade practice. You're also, as a seller, would also be required to give other information. For instance, if you've imported the goods, where have those goods come from? So essentially, you're looking at full disclosure to the consumer. The next is data privacy. Again, extremely important in this digital age. What the regulations look to protect is whose data are you collecting? What are you doing with it? What measures are you taking to protect it? What does a consumer do if there is a breach? and most important, informed consent. So your customer should know what you intend to do with the data and why you're collecting it. The next is payment mechanisms. I think we would have all seen a Razor Pay or a PayU, all of these apps that sort of, service providers that come up on any kind of portal. So whether you're using an e-commerce marketplace app like Amazon, or whether you're doing a purchase through a seller on their website directly. These are regulated entities by the Reserve Bank of India. So they need to standard in terms of how they manage their business. They also play a very important role considering the financial information that they have in hand. And they need to make sure that this financial data of the customers and whoever is using the website is maintained securely. The last part is a mix of regulations. So starting with having a valid contract, like I was mentioning, that customers need to know everything about the product. So you would have seen most websites sort of open with a statement that says accept all terms and conditions. I think very few of us actually read that, but that is the place where you would want to tell the customer what your product is about. You have all of the information pertaining to it sort of set out. The second is the Competition Act, where you don't want to have any, which kind of governs all unfair trade practices. And there are sector-specific regulations. So, for instance, pharma or the Drugs and Cosmetics Act or food-related. And then we have regulations with regard to packaging or labeling or measuring products, which is under the Legal Metrology Act. The last one is the Sale of Goods Act, which essentially governs any kind of relationship between a buyer and a seller. So obligations between a buyer and a seller would be governed by the Sale of Goods Act. Now, the third is policies that you should have in place. We already touched upon this before. Give full disclosure about what your service or your product is about. So, for example, if you want to talk, you need to talk about your exchange policy, your return policy, how you process payments, if there are any warranties related to your product. For instance, Urban Company has a very clear statement that sets out that that it is only a facilitator and does not actually provide any of the services. The services are all provided by third-party service providers. So this sort of gives them a bit of a protection. So if there is any issue, it is always with regard to the service provider and not the facilitator, which is Urban Company itself. There is the privacy policy, which I think we already touched upon in terms of how you use the data. I'll move to the next aspect, which is key agreements that you should have in place. These are broadly three in nature. So you could say one set would be, agreements that you sign up with vendors or suppliers or even e-commerce platforms. This is an important one. You need to keep clear your roles and your obligations. Each party's roles, liabilities, responsibilities should be very clearly set out. For instance, brands who sign up with e-commerce websites, for instance, a Myntra or Ajio or Amazon, sometimes don't have the negotiation power because you're dealing with a large behemoth, right? I mean, they won't really accept all of the terms that you would want. Recently, I think brands have an issue with, say, returning of the products. So, for instance, usually it's the e-commerce platform that handles the delivery and return from the customer. But what do you do if your inventory is sort of lying with this e-commerce platform? They may not be obligated to return that unsold inventory to you. So you would want your agreement to cover all of these aspects so that then you don't have any issues later with having your inventory returned to you. Or for instance, commissions tend to be very high on these kind of websites. While you may not be able to negotiate the commercials, you can look at a flexible or a different way of, where you could use their resources that are available to them to your advantage. What I mean by that is, while they can't share personal data, they have demographic information. So you could look at sort of leaning into that to see how you can place your product, maybe increase brand visibility, look at doing collaborations with them, just expand the scope of how you could grow that relationship. And at the end of the day, even if the terms are onerous, you could look at doing maybe a short-term contract so that you're not bleeding for too long, or you're not sort of tied into a long-term arrangement which does not really work for you. The other is an agreements with the payment gateways. These, again, like I was mentioning, these are regulated entities, but because they're dealing with confident with very sensitive financial information of customers, it's important that they have the required measures in place to safeguard this data. The last is IP assignment or license agreements. The crux of these agreements would be ownership of your IP. So, for instance, if you've hired a designer to say, you sell T-shirts, and you've hired a designer to put up, designs on these T-shirts, what you would want to do is to ensure that all of these designs actually belong to you or your business and not to the designer. So for these aspects, agreements should help and have sort of clear terms within the agreement so that your business is safeguarded. Now I'll hand it over to Vanilla to take you through issues regarding brand protection and other challenges.
Now, coming to brand protection, every business before setting up should spend time in understanding what they want their brand to represent. One should spend considerable amount of time and efforts to ensure that what is it that their brand is going to represent and depict. A brand does not just mean the trademark and the logo or the packaging. It also comes with what the reputation should be, the assets, and the customer's trust. So, for this, one should understand that there are ways in which one can protect their brand. First thing, we can look at registration of the trademark for the business. So, when someone is coming up with a business, they can come up with a name for their business which should be distinctive in nature, and they can register it on the trademark registry's website. So, while they are doing that, it is also important that they look into the database whether there are any similar trademarks or logos which are being applied by other third parties, because it becomes very important that we are not conflicting with any other businesses. Now, once you do that, once the registration is done, your job doesn't stop there. It also entails enforcement of those rights. Enforcing rights in your trademarks or logos or your brand becomes very important. You can do that firstly by doing a search on the trademark registry's website. So every Monday there's a journal that's out. There are various ways in which one can monitor what are the similar trademarks or the identical marks that are being uploaded or people are applying for. When you come across such an application, there is a mechanism under which you can oppose those marks. That would ensure that you are opposing and you are not letting a trademark which is similar to yours going through registration. The other aspect is when the usage is online or offline, then in that case, you can always seek legal advice and issue cease and desist notices. That is a legal notice where you can call upon them to refrain from using such trademark which is similar to yours. And depending on the quantum of the damages or the implication that it's having on the business, there are always mechanisms by which you can file a infringement suit. Now, we would want to discuss what are the challenges and recommendations in e-commerce businesses. The first is safeguarding personal data of the customers. It is very important that one has robust data protection measures on their platforms, because we tend to, on the website, seek a lot of information from the customers, which could be on financial credit card details, or it could be their phone numbers, their email IDs. So it becomes very important for the businesses to ensure that they are protecting and safeguarding that personal data. And also, one mechanism that they can implement is to ensure, say, for instance, promote people using a stronger password for their business, for their login credentials. Also, the payment gateways ensure that they are as per the industry standards. Now, coming to the next would be product liability. Now that e-commerce is a part of Consumer Protection Act, like how Kaushalya just discussed, it is very important that whatever information is being put out there on the platform is accurate and genuine, and we are not misleading anybody, and we are delivering the product which we have promised them to do, not like we deliver a soap instead of a cell phone. So these are the things that one has to look into when they are into this business. And then coming to counterfeit products. So back in the day, counterfeit was something probably they were sold underground or in a corner of a road. But now that internet has taken over and people have found ways to sell counterfeit products, it becomes very important that one monitors what are the counterfeit products that are being sold in the market. That could be through e-commerce platforms. And as you all must be knowing that on e-commerce platforms, there are certain procedures and guidelines that have been set on the portals itself to ensure that we raise complaints and ensure that the listings are taken down. One such case is where Snapdeal had and against Titan filed a case against Snapdeal for having a lot of counterfeit Titan and Fast Track products on the website. And the High Court actually directed that every listing which is fake had to be taken down. So these are the measures that one can take, but the major challenge that comes is one monitor. So it's important that there is a team, effective team, which monitors all these counterfeit products. Then coming to the internal arrangement of the business, there are employees to whom confidential information is given, client details are given, customer data is given. So in that case, it is important that there are agreements in place where confidentiality clauses are mentioned and also non-solicitation clauses. But one thing to bear in mind is when we have all these contracts in place, they should be legally enforceable. So these are few of the challenges and recommendations in the e-commerce business. And now we would be moving on to social media marketing, and I would be handing over to Kaushalya to deal with that.
Thank you, Vanilla. That was very insightful. Moving on to online advertising, I think we were talking about earlier about how the rules of business have changed, and with that, the regulators have actually had to keep up with these changing times, and they have to some extent. But this is such an evolving space. I mean, I think it's a learning curve for everyone involved. There are two main regulatory bodies. One is the CCPA, which is the Central Consumer Protection Authority, which is the main regulatory authority set up under the Consumer Protection Act. Then there is ASCI, which is the Advertising Standards Council of India. This is a self-regulatory body. So what I mean by that is while the general public can reach out to ASCI to sort of file a complaint if they find any material objectionable, ASCI itself does not have any powers other than to sort of send a notice or complain against a particular product or an advertisement. They don't have any authority to sort of fine any brand or company. But that said, ASCI and the CCPA work quite well together on a multitude of these kinds of regulations, and they work extensively together to sort of cover the landscape that they are meant to, at least on the online space, so that the regulations are able to keep up with market trends. Here there are two, three main regulations. So one is the main Consumer Protection Act we spoke about. Then there is the Prevention of Misleading Advertisements and Endorsements Act. And there are also certain sector-specific requirements. Say, again, we mentioned food earlier and pharma. There's also tobacco and alcohol, which are essentially prohibited sectors where you can't have ads. Financial products, I think we all know the jingle that goes with mutual fund products where it says, mutual funds are subject to market risk and, use discretion. Things like that. And now we want to show you a short video, which I think will help to clear up, the expectations of the regulator and the regulations.
रमेश पिस्तौल लेके एंटर करते हैं। 200 डाकू इंतजार कर रहे हैं। गोलियों की बौछार होती है, डिस्काउंट डिस्काउंट डिस्काउंट। गोलियां रमेश की बॉडी से टकराती हैं, गिरती हैं, टक टक टक। रमेश मुस्कुराता है। क्लोज अप। बॉडी को बनाए डायमंड जैसा बुलेट प्रूफ डायमंड टॉनिक।
Thank you, Vanilla. I think that video truly sums up what the regulations are all about. So any kind of false description of a product or a false guarantee that goes with the product, and unfair trade practice that we spoke about earlier. So that would be making a representation or a statement regarding the product which is not true. So for instance, any kind of instant weight loss product, but you don't tell the customer that brands don't tell customers that it could cause nausea or have any other kind of side effects, or hair fall control or skin products that skincare products that can have other kinds of allergies or other kinds of reactions, and we don't sort of give the consumer the full disclosure so that they can take an informed decision. So that's the essence of the regulations. To sum it up, what the regulations are looking for are three things. One is due diligence. Have the brands and companies done their due diligence? Can they back up the claims that they're making within their product or the service? The second is clear disclosure. So providing clear information regarding the product, from ingredients, what has gone into it, what it's about, what it's meant to do. The third is disclaimers. So that would mean what it can't do and what it is not meant to do. So for instance, if you need to say that a particular product has a very limited shelf life, if it is not refrigerated, you would need to say that, it's best before X date or whatever, whatever the case is. You would want to set out all of these conditions upfront so that the customer knows what he's getting into and knows that he can take a clear decision based on the information that is available to them. The other restricted practices are bait advertising. I think, we would have all seen ads that say 50% off, 75% off, only to find that once we've entered the store, there are 2 items on sale and the rest of the store is, at a regular price. That would be bait advertising where, you lure the customer in, but you can't really live up to your promise. The second would be free claims, where you say a certain product or a service is available for free, but you don't tell the customer that either he or she has to sort of, sign up for a particular subscription, or the return and the delivery is something that they will have to pay for, and other charges that get added on and are not sort of informed to the customer upfront. The third is children targeted in advertisements. Here, there be claims that help the child grow, be more intelligent, or encourage them to do dangerous stunts, or create body image issues for children. Or these kind of ads, which are specifically targeted at children, are also prohibited. We'd like to show you, a few images now that we've gone through a few examples of what is prohibited. Maybe you all can just give us a thumbs up if you think these images and these ads are kosher, or if you think they're misleading, you can just give us a thumbs down. Yes, this one was actually something that ASCII complained about, saying that the brand could not say that it was an immunity booster unless they had the science to sort of back it up. What about this one? I think Complan is a very popular brand. We've all seen this growing up. I'm a Complan boy or a Complan girl. This one too, ASCII had a complaint about, because they did not think that, they asked the brand if they could back up this claim that they had made about 2x growth in children. And because the brand could not back it up, they had to modify the ad. So this one would be misleading if, whoever the seller is can't actually go through with the offer and cannot sell at half price, or does not have, the supply available with them.
But hasn't he kind of protected himself by saying special offer? It could be anything. It could be interpreted anyway, right?
What about this one? I think this is a sort of fundamental principle of economics, that there is no such thing as a free lunch. So anyone sort of claiming to provide something for free and is not able to back it up would definitely be a misleading ad. Yeah, now we'll move to something called dark patterns in advertising. I think we would have all seen this in the physical world, in somewhere or the other, in other stores or at supermarkets as well. So a dark practice is essentially something where a deceptive design within the interface, which tricks customers into acting in a way that you would not normally. Some employment of these you would have seen in stores or in supermarkets, where they'll always keep candy at the eye level of children. Or, makeup stores, they sell, small little like nail polish bottles or nail polish removers and small items right by the checkout counter. And you would end up sort of picking that up. These play on basic principles of psychology, like, basic principles of psychology like nudges, and that inch customers towards acting in a certain way. And that's been helpful for brands, at least in the physical world, for a long time. Now, these employed in the online space can go really wrong, because of the expanse and the access that the internet has. And that's why the regulators have sort of come down on certain practices, which they call dark practices, and these are prohibited. So, for example, false urgency. So this would be where you claim that you have very limited stock and it's not going to last very long, and that which is actually not the case. Or basket sneaking, where at the end when you go to bill, they have multiple items that are sort of added onto it, and which were not there earlier when you initially bought the product. Or bait and switch, where you sign up to buy a certain product at a very low price, only to realize that it's not available and only a higher priced item is available. Or subscription traps. I think this happens a lot with media websites, where you sign up for a newsletter, but it is actually impossible to sort of sign out of it. Or even confirm shaming, where and this happens a lot with travel websites, where they insist that you'd want to travel with risk if you don't buy insurance, and these come in pre-ticked sort of options, and the customer doesn't really it sort of ends up purchasing the insurance as well. Or drip pricing, where other elements and line items are sort of added into the price just at checkout, and sometimes you don't even notice that these items have been added. Or nagging, where you're playing a game, for instance. This happens a lot with games, where you can't move ahead unless you've subscribed to a certain plan or you've bought a certain product. It does not allow you to move forward. These are all practices that have been flagged by the regulators as something that brands and sellers should not be doing. We've kind of pulled out a few interesting images, and we've sort of numbered them. So maybe in the chat box you could put down your responses against the number, and we can go through each slide. Any thoughts on these? So the image that says choose your free gift, you would have baited the customer into sort of coming to your store to buy something, or, where you get a free gift. But if you're not able to sort of come through on that commitment, then that would be misleading. Or, for instance, somebody comes to buy this laptop that you have claimed is at $899, but when they come to the store, they realize it's not available, and they have something that is available for a higher price, say 15,000 rupees. So that would be a misleading again. So, I mean, I think the act now is self-explanatory. It's definitely number 4 is causing a lot of urgency, where they're saying that you have to, claim this 50% off, and it's the absolute last chance. Or if there are only 3 days left to shop, it's definitely creating a sense of false urgency. Any thoughts on 5 and 6? Yes, 5 would be nagging, where in the middle of the game, there are constant pop-ups to say, purchase this additional add-on. And the other image would be an example of drip pricing, also misleading, where you would not know that a certain product is, sort of stacked up in price. You'd find that out only when you're going into checkout. What about number 7? Yes, this one too, because it's sort of creating a sense of false urgency. And number 8 as well, because this would be confirm shaming, where brands or sellers sort of force you to sign up for things where for charity or something like that, where the cost gets added up. So I'd like to just touch upon a few sector-specific updates. Recently, there were a few updates on, for the food and healthcare industry, where now sellers need to sort of submit a self-declaration, which essentially says that the ad or whatever it is that they're going to use, the creative, meets the requirements that the regulator has. This is still early days. I mean, it's just a new requirement. We'll have to see what the regulators do with all of this sort of information collection, because no one at this point is checking it. It's just a declaration that you make to the regulators. The other is endorsing sort of food and food items where you claim that something is nutritious or it has immunity. The regulations are quite clear that anybody talking about this, for instance, a healthcare professional, then they need to disclose that they are that they are a healthcare professional and they're qualified to sort of comment on this particular aspect. Second is that they've done their due diligence, and if they're not professionals, then they need to be absolutely clear about that and be upfront about it. And also mention that their advice is not a substitute for medical advice, and they do need to go to their doctors to understand whether they can use this particular product or not. And lastly, regarding skincare, I think Fair and Lovely has now changed its branding to Glow and Lovely because, after a lot of, for several years, I think the product was marketed as a fairness cream, which they could not back up. And now they have actually changed their packaging and called it Glow and Lovely to be on the right side of the regulations. So with that, I will hand it to Vanilla to talk to you about the exciting space of influencer marketing.
In today's digital landscape, it is the age of influencers. As soon as we log into any social media platform, be it Instagram, be it Facebook, be it YouTube, the first thing we come across is an influencer talking about a skincare product or makeup or clothing or electronics. So I've always wondered, who are these influencers? How are we terming them as influencers? These are the people who have a trusted voice in the internet. They, by literally the sense of the word, they are the people who have an influence on the audience. They impact the role, they impact the decision making of the audience who are watching it, and also the opinions that they would have on a product or a service. Given their reach and impact these days, it has become so common that every brand reaches out to an influencer for promoting their product. The best part about having influencers, what I feel, is that every influencer putting out their content always personalizes and sends out the relevant information. For instance, we all know, say for instance, Kusha Kapila, who's such a famous influencer, we all knew that she was there for funny videos at one point in time. And she made it a point to incorporate her South Delhi videos in promoting a brand, for instance. So this is how influencers have had a huge impact in brand promotions of various businesses. Now, coming to what happened is that at one point, this whole space was not at all regulated. That's when ASEI came up with guidelines back in 2021 to ensure that there are certain guidelines that are there on the advertisers and the influencers. So this just ensures that there is responsible advertising and it doesn't go unchecked, because there's so many audience who is really relying on the comments that an influencer has to make. So it just is a respect that we owe to the consumers to ensure that the required disclosures are made and people are knowing that if they're watching a content, whether it's a paid promotion or is it something of a review that they're giving by themselves. So ASCII came up with these guidelines, and now we will all be seeing on social media that actually influencers do follow and advertisers have to bear that in mind when they promote any product on social media. So some of the disclosures are, the label has to clearly identify the advertisement, even by the advertiser and the influencer. If you will see that there would always be a disclosure, whether it's an it's an advertisement, it's a sponsored link, or if it's a collaboration, paid promotion, such disclosures are also part of the guidelines of ASCII. Then it should be also in the same language. If it is in English, it's preferable that the disclosure is also made in the same language. Now, coming to, there are different formats in which an ad can be there. It could be in an audio format, it could be in a video format, or it could be in an image format. When it's in audio format, it is important that in the audio, it is disclosed that it's an ad. And if it's an image, then it should be imposed on the word ad, or the fact that it is an ad should be imposed on the image. And in a video, I think it becomes very easy because there's a caption and everything else is also put up on the top left. There can be there can be a disclosure that it's a paid promotion. One other thing is that while influencers promote a lot of brands, it becomes very important that the influencers also have a due diligence check on what product are they promoting or what service are they promoting, it becomes the responsibility of both the advertiser and the influencer to ensure that they are abiding by these guidelines. Now, if you look at Virat Kohli's ads, there are two ads that we've put up on the screen, one to your left and one to your right. You will notice a difference that on the left, on the top left, it's mentioned that it's paid partnership. On the right, while Virat Kohli was promoting a lovely professional university, but the words ad or paid collaboration or paid promotion is not mentioned. So this would be something that may not be in compliance with the ASCII guidelines, but whereas the one on the left is clearly in compliance. And it is important that all the influencers do this check. And we do notice that in today's day, there are these disclosures which are being made by the influencers. Now, coming to the contractual obligations, contracts become very crucial for several reasons because of the demand that the influencers have and the manner in which every brand is going to influencers to promote their product. So, the reason why you need these contracts is because to ensure that clear expectations are set out in terms of what is the scope of work, including the deliverables, timelines, specific requirements, because timelines sometimes become so crucial. For instance, it's a sale that you want them to promote, and it should be during a certain period. So such clarification should be made beforehand in the contract itself. And also it ensures that there is some kind of a legal protection given to both the influencer as well as the advertiser. Compensation should also be mentioned, such as the compensation can be in the form of flat fees, it could be in the form of commissions, it could be in the form of any monetization. Now, coming to, say, for instance, someone has onboarded an influencer for promoting their brand, it is important that the distribution channel is also mentioned. For instance, is it Instagram? Is it going to be YouTube or Facebook? Because they may have different influencers for different other platforms. And also, one other major important factor is ownership of content, because the manner in which the influencers come up with their content is always unique. So that clarification as to who's going to own that video, how do they want to exploit that video, these are things that need to be set out very clearly. And as we just went through a couple of guidelines that are there that have been given by ASCII, it's important that the influencers are abiding by it, and it's in a way good that there is some kind of a term that is there that they will be complying with those guidelines. While a lot of times we may not have the luxury of executing a formal contract, and even if it's through an email or any other means, it's important that all these terms are there in order to ensure that there is no misunderstanding or any legal complications going forward. Now, having spoken about so much influencer marketing, it is interesting to see the amount. So ASCII conducted an influencer trust report in February 2023, and it is amazing to see as to how many people actually believe in this advertising online. There are almost 90%, which there's only 9% which does not trust advertising in itself. And out of that, if we see the number of people who actually trust the influencer marketing is almost close to 79%, which is huge. And then the number of people who make purchases is again quite a lot if you look at the third chart that's been put up. So it's only 10% who do not buy basis the influencer promotions. And while people may buy one product or three products, that may vary, but the purchase is definitely happening. So that is something that we do see from this, is the fact that influencers really have an impact. So it becomes very important that they comply with the legal standards and the guidelines, because in the end, it is all about responsible advertising and owing to the customers. Now, coming to the next slide, it's a win-win for both the brand and the influencer. I would be lying if I didn't tell you that when I see a brand that is promoted by an influencer, I actually have trust in the brand, because probably I have the trust in the influencer. And the way in which I look at an influencer, depending on the number of brands that they're promoting, because that gives them that value and the credibility as being an influencer. So as per the study, it's been noted that it's a win-win for both the brand as well as the influencer. The next slide, going to the next slide. So if you'll see on the left, so this is where the violations have happened. If you would see on the left, it is a 2021 to 2022 report, and there's a 2022 to 2023 report. There's definitely a dip in the number of violations, and also we would see that the major violations that have happened are in the personal care sector, the food and beverage sector, and the fashion and lifestyle sector. So it's very important that one complies as an advertiser and as an influencer as to what the guidelines are, and ensure that we are always responsible for what is being said on the platform. Now, coming to the challenges and recommendations. Given that there has been so much internet usage and access to people to review content to make advertisements, defamation and brand disparagement is something that's rampant, because maybe because people don't know, or sometimes we feel it's okay. So one of the major things is that false and negative statements about another brand should not be made, because those actually impact the business of the other, and most of the times there is a possibility that those are not even substantiated claims. This is something that we commonly see, and in those cases you will notice that people may file for a defamation suit or a trademark infringement suit for infringing the rights in the trademark. Now, there was one such example where a very famous influencer had a 21-minute long video where they spoke about real fruit juice versus the real packaged fruit juice versus the fresh fruit juice. And when real, that is by Dabur, when they filed a case before the Calcutta High Court, the court made a statement saying, made a direction to remove the content, and also observed that one cannot make brazen comments and also directly identify a company. So it was not just that they made comments about packaged juices generally, but they called out the brand. So in that situation, they were asked to take down. So these are some things that one must keep in mind, whether it happens to their own brand or against their brand. Now, coming to the next is copyright infringement. Given the digital age, again, we have access to videos, we have access to so many softwares, we have access to artwork of third parties, images. One thing we should bear in mind is that that image or that artwork may actually belong to someone. It's a creative mind that's gone into it, and one might have the legal rights to exploit it. So before such usage, it's very important that permissions are taken. If not, one may land up in any copyright infringement suit, or in the event that one notices that someone else is using such content, you always have the option of instituting a legal action against them. That could be in the form of copyright infringement. If you look at the right, a couple of years ago, this made a huge noise on the internet. If you would see on the right, that is Dior having some kind of similar print of people tree. That was the accusation that was made, which went into a settlement later. But this was something that was pointed out, the fact that not to use artisans' pictures without taking permission, or some similar designs. Now, coming to the next slide, having spoken so much about misleading ads in the previous segment, it is very important for all the social media marketing advertisers to ensure that they comply with the ASCII guidelines. And also, every media platform has its own set of rules and regulations which they have to comply with. That could be either YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, so that your content is not taken down from the platform. And like you would see on the right, there is Sensodyne paste, which where ASCII took an action, and it was said that you cannot use the word world's #1 sensitivity toothpaste. Therefore, they modified it to make it #1 dentist recommended brand for sensitive teeth. Now, coming to the next slide, which is on data protection and infringement of privacy rights. So a lot of people have products which the customers use. They may get a good feedback. They want to promote their product. They may want to use it in the form of reviews. It's very important that one seeks permission before posting that content on the platform. That could be a skincare product or someone using. So it's better always to take the permission before such posting has happened on the platform. And coming to celebrity rights, while celebrities are whatever they say, it's out in the open. It's important that one takes their permission or no objection before using it for any commercial purposes, because courts have again and again held that celebrities having these likenesses or images or any AI usage, they can actually exploit it commercially. So no one else has the right to exploit them for their own commercial benefit. So one such case was of Anil Kapoor, where a lot of people were using his images, and the court very clearly granted a direction that all such content should be taken down. So these are some of the aspects which are there in relation to social media marketing that one should bear in mind and comply with. And now we have concluded speaking about the challenges and recommendations. I will give it to Kaushalya to speak about the key takeaways.
Thanks, Vanilla. This was very insightful. I just wanted to share a few key takeaways just to sort of summarize the discussion that we've had. I mean, I think we've spoken about a lot of topics, but three things that I would urge all businesses to keep in mind. First is, we spoke about how technology has changed the rules of business. That said, I think a lot of things will remain the same. Sorry. So, yeah, I wanted to sort of highlight three key takeaways that would be important for all brands and sellers and business owners to know. The first being that, we spoke about how technology has changed the rules of business. And while it certainly has, I do believe certain things still remain the same. For instance, the classic battle of David versus Goliath, right? I mean, we can't compare ourselves to huge organizations like Amazon or Myntra or RGO. We can't compare. We won't have the same negotiation power, the bargaining power with these brands. It's important that as companies, when listing with them, that you be flexible, try to see, what you can leverage basis their resources, and most importantly, know your non-negotiables. And the last one would be to know where you're vulnerable so that you're not caught off guard at any point in time. The second is, something I wanted to highlight is that the regulations are meant to support and guide. They're not meant to overwhelm businesses. Though it may seem like there are a lot of regulations that you need to follow, the essence of the regulation is to provide all of the information to a customer upfront so that they can make an informed choice. Whereas for any business, the basic tenet would be to sort of create customer trust and maintain it always. That said, the two seem to be extremely complementary and they don't work against each other. They should work together. You know your brand best and you're the best spokesperson for it. So, you can showcase it in the right way. The third is that the digital age has sort of blurred the boundaries between content and advertising. Again, the regulations are not meant to curtail your creativity in any way. They exist to protect the public at large. So when you're in doubt or you're not clear whether the content that you're trying to put out there meets the guidelines, it's a good idea to go through the information available. The ASCII website is actually very informative and has a lot of guides and tutorials in terms of what they're looking for, what the regulator would be concerned about. Similarly, you should consult with your advisors or consultants, whoever you're working with, just to make sure that you're on the right path, because eventually brand reputation is what you would want to preserve and what you would want to keep. That is what you stand for. That's precious. With that, we'd like to conclude our presentation. Thank you so much for giving us this opportunity to speak with you on this topic. Again, thank you to the FICCI team. We're happy to take any questions if anybody has any.
Thank you, Kaushalya and Vanilla. Just want to say it was such an interesting session. I was hoping there would be a little more, but we'll do more questions.
So, I'm Kulpreet. I'll be handling the Q&A session. Thank you, Kaushalya and Vanilla. It was an incredible, informative session. Participants, if you have any question, please feel free to post them in the chat box. I have a first question from Shilpa. So she wants to know how strict is the enforcement against these dark practices? Because ultimately, Complan 2x growth ad ran for a very long time and it prevalent in people's mind till now. And online, we find many ads which make claims that are not proven.
All right. Sorry for the echo. Yes, so I think the regulators have sort of found their feet now. This particular Complan ad that we were talking about was something where ASCII objected. So, ASCII, like we were saying, is a regulatory body. And they don't have any regulatory power. So, for instance, they can't fine you or they can't imprison you. Whereas the competition, the CCPA, which is set up under the Consumer Protection Act, can. That said, I think the large risk to brands here is really reputational. Not necessarily monetary, because large organizations like Zydus that owns Complan, I mean, they could pay the fine, but it is still a reputational risk for them, which is why the guidelines become helpful, which is why to sort of be mindful of it. Because if it is flagged, that is something that is associated with your brand for a long time, and which is what you would want to avoid. I hope that answers the question.
Thank you. We have a second question from Sudha. As a brand, when we are looking at onboarding an influencer, what are the things we need to verify?
Yeah. So the major things that we need to check, was the question on influencer just now? Sorry, I couldn't actually hear. Kulpreet, can you repeat the question?
Yeah, please.
So the question is, what should you check if you're engaging?
Yeah. So when we are sorry.
Can I repeat?
Yeah.
Yeah. So as a brand, when we are looking at onboarding an influencer, what are the things we need to verify?
Firstly, we should have a contract where we are able to set out very clear information. Also, as a person who's onboarding, it's important that you find out what their reach is, what is their credibility, and also someone who would be able to would be able to abide by the guidelines that are set out. Because that is something, while there is no such hard and fast rule as to who you should be going for, but on the business front, you may want to check that. But going forward, one of the major things is that they comply with all the required disclosures that we spoke about.
Thank you. We have a question from Suchi. She wants to know, please mention the site on which we can check if a particular creative we use in our content, like social media content, is legally not infringing copyright issue,
So, firstly, it mainly depends on where we pick that image from. A lot of times, even on Google, when we look at, it may be saying on the right side, saying maybe protected by, maybe copyrighted. So those are the things that we need to look into. There's no website on which we can go and check whether whether the image that we are using is infringing anybody's copyright.
We have a question from Pratibha. The terms and conditions and other guidelines are too many to keep a check. Is there any tool or we can, automatically check when we register that we comply with all these terms and conditions?
Is the question from a consumer perspective, as in when you're going through the terms and conditions?
No, if I register, can I ask the question, please? When I register in Insta or anywhere, any social media platform, all these are taken care automatically, right? From a sale point of view, if I'm as a vendor, if I'm putting my product.
Right. Yeah. So the platform itself has their own sort of terms and conditions. What the regulations require is that the seller also meets provides all of that information to the e-commerce platform. So when they're listing your product, they have the product specifications and all of the details that are required. That is sort of put down and put forth. In terms of what you need to cover, it would just be all of your what the product is for, what the use is for, if there is an expiry related to it, where what it contains. All of that product description should be sort of available. And even in terms of the terms and conditions, you would have certain guidelines, but in terms of if you're listing on an e-commerce platform, those delivery channels will have their own sort of requirements, but you will not be in charge of the delivery. So that would be, the customer engaging directly with the e-commerce platform. So you would be responsible only for the product specifications. If you're selling directly from your website, that's where the delivery and the warranty and the return and the exchange policies would come into play.
But even that, when you register with the payment gateway, they take care of all that, right? When you are for your website.
That's correct. That's correct.
Yeah, I have another question. What steps should we take if false or damaging information about our business is posted on social media?
Sorry?
What steps should we take if false or damaging information about business is posted on social media?
Right. First thing would be depending on what kind of information has been posted. You can start with a legal notice, but your remedy would lie before a court to ensure that such content is taken down. But one thing I can definitely say is before even going towards that, you may want to use the portal to ensure that you flag that video where such information is being given. But one thing is that statements like defamation, it's not a social media that can take a call whether it's defamatory in nature or not. So the recourse may invariably lie before the court. Hope that answers the question.
Yes. I have another question. How should businesses handle situation when a bait marketing claim leads to consumer complaint or legal action? I repeat, when a bait marketing claim leads to a consumer complaint or legal action.
Yeah. So in that case, I mean, I think the first thing would be to sort of respond to the question that, the legal notice or whatever it is that has come through. You would want to sort of take care that you explain yourself that, obviously as a brand, you'd want to say that the advertising or whatever content that you put out was not misleading in any way. And you'll have to back up and sort of explain why that is not the case. Just, very directly with what the constitutes of the advertisement are. So, explain directly why it was not and make your stance clear.
Thank you. I can take more questions. Shilpa, Sujita?
Yes, Gulpreet, if you have, let's answer, let the speakers answer more questions. Do we have more?
Maybe one more question I have.
Yeah.
What are the consequences of false advertising under the law? I think it's same like consequences of false advertising under the law.
Right. So Protection Act, you could be fined up to 50 lakhs. There is also an imprisonment term. I think it's with maximum of 3 years. So in severe cases, that's the extent of the regulatory outreach.
I have a question on influencer. What key elements should be included in a contract with an influencer, and and how long should be the validity of the contract?
We had set out in the slide a couple of pointers. One should be definitely on what is the scope of work or who is going to own the content. What are the timelines in which one should give the content? Termination clauses should be set forth. Financial, like payments, how the payment is going to be made under and by when. You can have milestones set up for the payment that is going to be made. So these are the things that can be put in a contract. Now,
thank you.
It's done, Gulpreet?
Yes.
Yeah. I request Pratibha Kunda to deliver the vote of thanks.
Good evening, everyone. Today, we've had an opportunity of delving into the intricacies of e-commerce and social media marketing compliance, expertly presented by Kaushalya Guduru, partner at Tattva Legal, and Venela Reddy, manager at Tattva Legal. On behalf of Flow Hyderabad and Chairperson Priya Gazdar, I extend our heartfelt gratitude for sharing your insights and practical expertise with us. Tatwa Legal Hyderabad is the largest full-service law firm in Telangana and Andhra Pradesh, representing a diverse range of clients. Their contributions to the legal landscape are truly commendable. We thank our audience for their participation and engagement throughout the event. A special note of appreciation goes to our past guests for their constant backing. We are grateful for the support from Sparkle and our knowledge partner, Tatwa Legal, for this event. I'd like to thank you all for this evening.
Thank you.
We have actually, Tatva Legal has put together a document.
Yeah.
Can you show that, Kaushalya? We'll be circulating it to our members also. Can you put it on screen?
Sure, we'll just put it.
Or if you sort of feel free to go through this document. If you'll have any questions, you can sort of reach out to us as well.
Hope you all can see the screen.
Yes, Vanilla, we can see.
So we just tried to highlight, the main things that you would need to sort of keep in mind. So yes, happy to take any questions later as well. You can write into us and let us know if you all have any clarifications that you'll need regarding.
That's really, quick reference for all that you have taken through the session.
Yes, that was the intent, because we do appreciate that the regulations are quite extensive.
And they've also promised to answer any questions we have. So later on also. So anybody, everybody can make use of this like a ready referencer and then note where additions or deletions or corrections can be made in our own contracts going ahead. Along with the link to the session, we can broadcast this also.
Sure. And also maybe any questions we can send out an email ID where they can write, the members can write to us, and we can take this to both Kaushalya and Vanilla.
Thank you so much. You made it very, very interesting, Kaushalya, Vanilla. This was very, very informative and very much needed in this time when all of us are in some way or the other hitching onto the, social media bandwagon. Somewhere or the other, in some radar, in some aspect, we are all part of this whole thing. Even if we are as buyers, we need to be aware of certain things. I think all that has been brought forth very, very informatively and very, very interestingly by you all. Thank you so much for this.
Thank you for having us.